Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Elvart. I'd like to start today's lesson with a little review of color theory. We start with the three primary colors, and those are blue, red, and yellow. You can think of those primary as basically colors you would see in a kindergarten or somewhere that really likes bright, vibrant colors. To get secondary colors, you mix the primary colors. Red and blue makes purple. Blue and yellow makes green. Red and yellow makes orange. So far, I think all of this is review. But in case you've forgotten, we just wanted to go through those. You can make pretty much any color using the primary colors. Next, I want to talk a little bit about complementary colors. Complementary colors are colors that make each other brighter. So let's take, if you put red next to green, it makes the red pop. It seems to be brighter. If we put blue next to orange, that will make the orange appear brighter. And the same thing with yellow and purple. Okay, so those are the complementary colors. You will find them opposite each other on the color wheel. And if it's hard for you to remember, think about this. The primary colors are always equal distance away from each other. The secondary color is a mixture of these two primary colors. So blue, yellow, green, red, yellow, orange, blue, red, purple. Okay? So if you were to put red, blue, and yellow in a triangle and then put purple, orange, and green in an upside down triangle, you will always know which two are across from each other. Okay, today's lesson is going to be skill building and painting. We did skill building with drawing, but now we're going to take a look at two different kinds of paint. Specifically watercolors and tempera paints. Now, tempera paints come in two forms. They come in something called cakes, which look a lot like the watercolors, where they're dry until you add water. These happen to be pre-mixed tempera colors. That's what I'm going to be demonstrating with today, but we'll be using tempera cakes, and those will look pretty much the same. So what we're going to do is note that all these colors are dry. Okay, so watercolors do not become effective until you add water to them. So we're going to take our paper. We have a glass of water, and we're going to dip our paintbrush in the water. Okay, then we're going to look at our thing. Here we have, okay, purple WC, that stands for purple watercolor. So I'm going to take the color purple and I'm going to add my water to it and I'm going to stir it around. The reason I do that is because if you just go right in to your paints without adding water and stirring them around, they're going to be very light. Okay, one thing to note about watercolors is now that I've mixed it and I have it on my brush, it's going to be pretty dark when I start putting it on. And as I pull down and color, it's going to get lighter. That's okay if you like that effect and you want the color to like fade out as you go, that's fine. If you don't want that, I'll add a little bit more water. I'll dip my brush back in the watercolor and I'll pull down again. Okay. Okay, and we're going to color this whole section purple. Okay, if we notice that it's starting to not show up, that means we have to either add water, and you can pull the color, it will get lighter, but that's one way to spread the color and get that effect where it gets lighter as you go down. I can add water to just my brush, a tiny bit, not a lot, and I could spread that color all the way to the bottom. Now we see how we've got this color that starts off dark and gets lighter as it goes down. That's one of the effects you can achieve with a watercolor. If I wanted to make it all dark, then I just go back, put some more on my brush, and just spread it around again. Okay? That's how I'd make the whole thing dark. You can do whatever way you would like. This is your preference, okay? Now, I'm finished with purple. I need to swirl my brush in the water. I'm going to wipe it off on my sponge, okay, until there's no more color showing, okay? So that's a little look at watercolor. We're also going to look at some other colors. So I said we have tempera paints and tempera, these are mixed temperas, but I'm going to now talk about a tint, which is adding white to a color, and a shade, which is adding black to a color. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is we always want to start with the lightest color and add the darker color in a little tiny bits to it until we get the color we want. So let's start like this. This one says red TMP, which means red tempera, okay? It's just a shortened version, so we could fit it in all these little pieces. Okay, so I'd like you to color that whole thing in with the red tempera, okay? Notice that the tempera, unlike the watercolors, when it starts drying up, it doesn't really get lighter, it just stops covering. So I'm going to dip one more time in the red, and I'm going to finish up my tempera. Okay, so I said that is like the same kind of coverage over the whole thing. We don't have that lightening of the color very much. Okay, now this one says when we want to make a tint, we want to add red to the white. Okay, why I say add red to white and not white to red is because we always have to start with the lighter color. So I am going to clear off my brush. I'm going to dab it on my sponge to get whatever's left off. Now, I'm going to take a bunch of white. You could do this on a cake too. You put a bunch of white on your palette or plate that you have for mixing. Then I'm going to take the tiniest bit of red. Okay, really look at how small that is. And I'm going to add it to the white. And that will give me a tint. So in the case of red, I have something that looks like pink. It's just a light, it's always going to be a lighter version of that color. Okay, so in terms of value, we're going to the light side of the value scale. Okay, then you're going to color this in, okay, with your tint. All right, I'm not going to do the whole thing now just to save time while I'm demonstrating, but you would fill in that whole part. I'm going to clean my brush. Okay, going to wipe it clean on this sponge. Okay, now I'm going to add black to my red. Why do I start with red? Because red is the lighter of those two colors. I'm going to put a little bit in the middle, enough that I think I can color this whole section. I'm going to take a little tiny dab of, I'm sorry, that was the wrong color. I'm going to take a tiny dab of black. Look at how much I got on there. That might even be too much. So I'm going to take a little bit off by just wiping it on here. Okay, and now I'm going to add it to the red. Okay, remember, you don't want to put too much or you're going to get something that looks closer to black than it does to red. We just want to make a darker red. All right, now that I have this, I'm going to color in here. Again, you would do this whole thing. Use the side of your brush to make lines. Like if you want a straight line or something that's kind of precise, you want to use the side of your brush. And then you can color the middle in just very easily. But go slow when you want an actual line. Okay, all right, so I would do that for the whole thing and color it in. All right, now I'm going to color one more time. Take my brush, mix it around. Okay, clean it here. Black is going to show up more, so I really want to make sure on this one, if I still have black on my brush, I'm going to mix it in there again, and I'm going to wipe it off again. Okay, This is especially important if after this, I'm going to go to a color like yellow that's really light. Yellow is a super light color, especially in watercolor. And if I have that black on my brush, it's going to show up in the yellow. Okay? So we're going to do that with all these. So this is blue TMP, which is tempera, green TMP, which is tempera. If you notice that you don't have a green, I would mix blue and yellow to make green, just like on our color wheel. Okay? Notice that green is between blue and yellow. Okay, so if I wanted to make that again, I would start with the yellow because that's the lighter color. Mix in, use enough, get enough on your palette so that you think you could fill in the whole space. I'm going to add a tiny bit of blue because that's the darker color. And I've made a green. Okay? And then I would take that green and paint it in here. Okay? If I want a darker green, I just may add more blue. Okay, one last thing. There are two spaces that don't have a color in them. One says any color WC crayon. And that WC again stands for watercolor. So what I'm going to do is take my watercolor crayons. They come in these boxes here. Your table will have a box that you can share, okay? Take any color you want. Okay, let's see. I am going to choose maybe a blue, okay? I'm going to take my watercolor crayon and I'm going to color this in very much like I color a regular crayon picture, okay? If you decide that you want to have a second color, then you can add a second color. So if I have blue and I add a little bit on this side of yellow, that's going to start to look green, okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash my brush. I want to make sure everything's off of it, okay? Dab it on here on my sponge until I don't see any colors there, okay? Now I am going to just dip it in my water. My water looks pink, but it's very diluted, so it will be okay. And then I'm going to push my water around this. Where I mix the yellow and the blue, I'm getting green. Okay? That's how watercolor crayons work. The same applies to watercolor pencils. So if I have a blue and a red watercolor pencil, I'm going to color this in a little bit. Okay? I'm going to put a little pink over here. I could use one color if I want, but if I want to mix, I can. Okay? Then I'm going to take my water. Again, you don't want it to be completely full. You can wipe it off a little bit so it's not completely loaded with water. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to blend these together. So I have some pink that runs into this purple. Okay? It's very light. That's the effect that you'll get with the watercolor pencil. All right, so let's get started. Thanks for listening, everybody, and ask if you have any questions, okay? Thank you.